Carlos Sainz, congratulations. That was quite a weekend at Monza. Yes, we are very happy. The car performed very well. Shame we didn't get the win, though. Overall, though, you must be very, very happy with how the weekend went. Yes, I think this was the most Italian Grand Prix for a very long time. You mean Ferrari getting pole and you and Charles racing right to the line and the wonderful reception by the Tifosi? No, I don't mean that. Then what do you mean? Well, I had my watch stolen outside the doors of the Armani Hotel. That's pretty Italian. Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm Gareth. He's Zog.
Hello.
And there is no third or even fourth person for this programme. They're dropping like flies. Sarah couldn't make this recording and Alex is properly unwell at the moment.
Yeah, poor chap.
He really is. Rotten, I don't know how public this is, but he picked up a bug when he was in hospital for a procedure. And it's made him very, very, very ill. And he's managing to work, but he's seriously depleted in energy terms at the moment. So, yeah, get well soon, Alex. We miss you. Hey, Zog, did you miss Formula One during the summer break? How about that for a link, eh? That was elegant.
Oh, well, no, I see what you did there. I did, but it's back with a bang. And, yeah, we've had some good entertainment.
Yeah, not too many bangs. That last race at Monza was beautiful. Wasn't it elegant, Zog? Do you know what I mean by that?
Well, it was elegant apart from the on-track action. Let's credit the Italian teams, Ferrari and Alfa Romeo, with both doing a terrific job with coming up with new liveries for Monza. And
absolutely.
And really great-looking cars. I mean, Alfa should stick with that
Agreed.
New livery. I really love it. And the Ferrari look echoing their Le Mans winners livery was fantastic. I gather that the team merch was flying off the shelves even faster than usual at the race. And I'm not surprised. Quite fancied one of those team shirts.
Yeah, me too. They are so cool. I mean, for me, you know how I feel about the, the Ferrari 333 SP sports car in Momo colours.
Right, yeah.
So yellow is a Ferrari colour. Put yellow on a sports car, it works for me. That car that won Le Mans this year couldn't have been prettier for me. It was the car I wanted to win Le Mans. And I was so thrilled when they honoured their sort of Le Mans tradition in Formula One, which is kind of interesting. You know, we talk about crossovers, don't we, in TV series and comic books. It was almost like a motorsport crossover moment where you admit there is another universe.
It was like the Lower Decks Star Trek Strange New Worlds crossover, which was fantastic.
It really, truly was a work of utter genius, and it made me grin all the way through. I would talk at length about that with you, Zog, but this isn't the podcast.
But yeah, we wouldn't be able to shut you up, so end of subject.
Yeah, I am on a Star Trek podcast. I appear on Make It So, a Star Trek Legacy podcast where I discuss 3 key episodes in Voyager. Recorded it a little while back and it's out there at the moment. If you want to hear me talking about Star Trek, go there, right? I loved it. Honestly.
I bet. I'm sure you.
Yeah. But hey, listen, the glory of Monza, I said it looked sort of magnificent. You know, the singing of the anthem beforehand, the colours on the cars, the strong Italian presence. Even I was proud to be Italian at the beginning of the race. That's how I felt. I am a bit of an Italianophile, though. You know that. We all are, you know?
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
With the Italian food, Italian style, Italian racing cars, Italian passion, what's not to love? But Monza is one of those races that I think has a particular deeper character than a lot of other races. And I think, even watching it, at TV distance, that comes across and you think, that will be a particularly good race to be at, particularly good atmosphere.
What do they call it? Tempio di Velocitia or something like that. The Temple of Speed. I was describing it to someone who doesn't understand these things, doesn't understand Formula One, that, if Ferrari are like the Catholic team in Formula One, being the Italian team, then Monza is effectively the Vatican, isn't it, of Formula One.
I guess, yes. I think that would, I see that. I can see that.
Would Silverstone be the Carnaby Street of Formula One, perhaps? I don't know. The Church of England, the Westminster Abbey.
I'd personally prefer a secular analogy here.
Good.
Let's say it's the Carnaby Street, the Oxford Street of Formula One, maybe.
They renamed one of the corners, didn't they? It's not called Parabolica anymore. It's called Curva Alboreto now, named after Michele Alboreto, I suppose.
Yeah, yes, who's absolutely worth commemorating. It's although that name, I think for a lot of people, it will always be Parabolica because that's the name that one's known it by. Just like the Lowe's hairpin is always the Lowe's hairpin. Lowe's hairpin. But we should also credit the Italian teams, or one of the Italian teams, Ferrari, for making that race so entertaining. They didn't come away with the win, but what entertainment we got. What terrific value we got from Sainz in that race. They almost spoiled it right at the end,
didn't they?
With their little that must have been a heart in the mouth moment for Ferrari bosses with their little coming together.
For the benefit of those who don't know the moments we're talking about, Leclerc was trying to pass Sainz to get third in the last sort of 5 laps, and they were told by their race director, they were said that no risk, but you are free to race, which is a contradiction in terms, you might say.
A racing driver's idea of no risk is different to a team boss's idea of no risk, I would suggest.
Yeah, it was heroic, and they did manage to keep it on the circuit. I think Leclerc made more mistakes trying to pass Sainz. Sainz drove very elegantly, very adultly, very intelligently. And it was a remarkable tussle. I genuinely had heart in my throat. I think I'm more tifosi than I realise. And I particularly like the lineup at Ferrari at the moment. I admire Leclerc as a human being. And I think Sainz is a far better driver than I previously ever gave him credit for. And to see those two on the edge, I thought, please don't mess it up, guys. Come on, we need Ferrari. Heaven knows we need someone to take the challenge to Red Bull. And of all the teams this year, Ferrari came out looking good, Aston Martin came out looking good, but Ferrari are back in it again. Isn't it ebbing and flowing a great deal?
It is, yeah. I mean, although I think we should maybe take a little bit of... have a little bit of caution in looking at those results and saying that Ferrari is suddenly the second fastest team, because Ferrari pulled out all the stops for this weekend. They did absolutely everything they could in terms of doing whatever they could technically with getting the maximum out of the engine and just digging deeper within themselves, and also not making any stupid mistakes in pit stops.
Yeah, which they're famous for.
Yeah. What do we do this weekend? Let's not up. How about that? They were absolutely, did everything they possibly could to get performance this weekend. That they may not maintain this relative pace, but Monza does have an interesting way of sort of. I think it often seems to shake things out in quite a revealing way. It's a Red Bull 1-2, then Ferrari 3-4, then Mercedes 5-6. There's a lot of consistency there, and you can read a decent amount into that.
It often throws up unusual results as well, like a Gasly win, or heck, Vettel's first win at Toro Rosso, which got him the Red Bull drive. Hey, while we're talking about Red Bull, Max Verstappen, 10 wins in a row, Zog.
Yeah, I mean, respect.
Wow.
He's driving, he's on phenomenal form. He is pretty much unbeatable this season. Certainly in that car. He's doing an incredible job. They've given him a great race car, and he's absolutely doing what they need him to do. He's winning, and there's no sign of that stopping. And he didn't even seem to be really pushing himself. When early in the race there was that little moment where in the first 14 or 15 laps, when Sainz, having held on to pole position off the start, was hanging on to the lead, Verstappen's chasing him, and he had a couple of goes at getting past, and Sainz was defending beautifully, quite strongly, quite assertively, and there was a moment where Verstappen was on the team radio, not exactly complaining about Sainz's drive, but I think he said, that was a bit naughty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you could tell he wasn't frustrated. From the tone of his voice, you could tell, I think, that he knew he was going to get past him in a few laps, and he wasn't going to have to work terribly hard to do that. He wanted to do it as soon as possible, but it's going to happen.
I think he read that exactly right, because I don't know if you saw the onboard footage of the start. You've got Carlos slightly ahead of Max, and when they went into the first corner, the onboard from Max's car shows that Max braked much earlier than Sainz in front of him. So he was thinking, I'm not going to get into a tussle in this situation. I've got performance to get past him, either over several stints or perhaps even in a few laps. He let him lead, he let him go, waited till he's got comfortable with his cars, and then the attack came on. It was kind of the hunt was on, that sort of feeling right from the word go. Can Ferrari keep them at bay? Not very long was the answer.
Right.
But that was part of the entertainment. You kind of know it was coming, but it was still spectacular when it happened. But you're right, the closing laps with Leclerc and Sainz, that's what we pay for in Formula One, isn't it? That stuff.
And we kind of needed that because, when Red Bull and Verstappen are being so dominant, you need a bit of uncertainty. You need some drama down the rest of the field. You need some real competition and racing to be happening at some point down the field. And so thank you to Ferrari for delivering on that front. Sainz and Leclerc were stars of the weekend. I think no question.
While we're on the Italian trip, there is one Italian team that we haven't mentioned. The team formerly known as Toro Rosso, currently known as AlphaTauri, next year to be called, we think, Hugo Boss, I think, is the latest betting that they will rebrand the team Hugo Boss. Intriguing. But they messed up with Tsunoda. His car failed on the formation lap. But Liam Lawson, he has a very special set of skills. You've heard me say that before. Liam Lawson, he was terrific in F2 and is proving to do a very good job in Daniel Ricciardo / Nick De Vries's car.
Yeah, 11th is a very solid result for him.
Yeah. In a difficult to drive car, everybody seems to think. Ricciardo's out now. We don't think he's going to make it back for Singapore, the next race. He must be kicking himself.
Yeah, I hadn't actually heard that he wasn't going to be around for Singapore for sure. Is that definite, or is that still speculation?
I think it is. I think it is definite that Liam Lawson will drive in Singapore. Right. Daniel's had some metalwork put into his fingers, hasn't he?
Yeah.
That takes time to heal. But, racing drivers, they do heal super quick. They give them that sort of super cold treatment, don't they? And that seems to help bones bind more quickly.
Does it? I mean, I don't know. I'm okay. I mean,
well, so they say.
Yeah, I wonder. It sort of sounds a little bit. I believe that a lot of sports people, under the advice and supervision of good physiotherapists and professionals, do use some of this cold treatment. So maybe there really is something to it. I wonder. Hey, if anyone's got some actual
evidence,
links to good, peer-reviewed evidence, I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah, fascinating. I just accepted it, but you're right. It does slightly edge into the Venn diagram of what I call wellness rather than health.
Well, that's kind of what I wonder about. Whether it's one of those things that has a certain sort of plausibility, but it's possibly one of those therapies that's where there's no effect actually than the therapeutic effect of being in a room with somebody who is saying, here's this treatment, we're paying attention to you, I am listening to how you're feeling, I am talking about your medical issues here, you're getting a sympathetic ear, and that makes you feel better. I wonder.
Yeah, you feel better in yourself because you're getting attention. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's definitely, like acupuncture or homeopathy and, definitely doing nothing other than essentially a placebo, a fancy placebo. But I wonder. But in any case, get well soon, Danny Rick. We want to see you back in a racing car and entertaining us at the weekend, because we love Danny Rick in a race car.
Yeah. I made spaghetti alla vongola, of course, over the Monza weekend. I like to try and make a meal that reflects the nation that are hosting the race. Barcelona, I will make a paella. I'll even have a go at some crude sushi or Japanese salmon teriyaki for the Japanese Grand Prix. You know, I'll give it a go.
Yep.
Give it a go. I made spaghetti alla vongole, a recipe that I got whilst in Rome in, I think, 97 when I was in Italy to go to Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix it was back then. And so I associate that. You know that dish. We have it when we go to Le Mans, don't we? Yeah, I do that. But it made me think, you know, we don't do enough Italian food motorsport crossover. We should have, I don't know, things like insalata caprese Alesi, for instance.
As an Lacey fan, although you're saying Italian, of course, but
he's legally French,
Corsican.
isn't he? Yeah. Good point. His real name isn't even John; it's Giovanni Alesi, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Which brings me to pasta fisichella, which is a recipe which I think you might see in a restaurant somewhere. Oh, pasta fisichella. Oh, you read it. You know, it's got capers in it. It's got chilies. It's very, very promising. When you get it, there's just not enough of that in it, and it's ultimately just a little bit disappointing. And I only can say that from the point of view of a massive Fisichella fan who, when he finally drove for Ferrari, it was shocking. It was hopeless, wasn't it?
It was a bit of a shame, but I can guarantee there are going to be restaurants in the Monza area and in the Modena area that are going to have Ferrari or motorsport themed named dishes. I think I'd put money on it.
Never occurred to me, but you're absolutely
it's a dead
right.
cert.
Yeah.
They have to be. Actually, they've been an interesting road trip. Researching motorsport food in the Monza and Modena areas.
They will remarket steak as, I don't know, Schumacher. They could have a Gerhard burger. A Gerhard burger.
A Gerhard burger. There you go. All right.
I was going to say schnitzel for Gerhard burger, but no, a burger.
A steak. I think that seems like that should be more of a. Yeah, well, that should be. I don't know. Steak alla Mansell.
That steak alla Mansell.
You know, I think that would be. It would be quite a Nigel Mansell dish, and of course, he won the love of the Tifosi for his efforts at Ferrari.
Il Leone.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a Mansell documentary. Where did I see it? Was it on Sky? Which I don't know if I've mentioned on the show before. My gosh, I saw it and it was an eye-opener. I saw Mansell in a way I'd never seen him before. That sounds like the line that describes, see Mansell in a way you've never seen him before, but it genuinely did. It opened my heart to this big, soft, very emotional, hard-working, determined, lovely fella by all accounts. Very sort of vulnerable sort of man. I'd never really had an emotional relationship with Mansell ever. I sort of skipped him for some reason. Damon, and it was James Hunt and Jackie Stewart and Enzo before that for me, and Prost in the Mansell period. But I really admire Mansell now, and I've always taken the mick out of him. But I think I stand down from that now. He was an extraordinary man. Is an extraordinary man.
On Sky, you say?
I think it was on Sky. Yeah.
I will look out for that.
Yeah, worth it. Recommend it to anyone who's unfamiliar with the history of F1. Why are you listening to this show? And second of all, go and watch that. Yeah.
But hey, since we're talking about Ferrari, how about the Ferrari movie that is coming out? Are you excited to see a Michael Mann Ferrari movie?
I don't know anything about this. Forgive me, who's Michael Mann?
Director of Thief with James Caan, director of Heat, famous with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer, etc. One of the absolutely great, crime movies of recent times. Director of Last of the Mohicans and LA Takedown, which was the TV movie that Heat was then based on. It's very interesting to watch LA Takedown and Heat. Quite close together. And he also directed a lot of Miami Vice, I think, before he got into making films. But he's a terrific filmmaker, and he has made an Enzo Ferrari biopic starring Adam Driver. What's not to like?
Wow, that sounds like it could be sort of dark and Italianate and very sort of mafiosi and all that. That's an intriguing idea.
I'm not sure that he'll have, shoehorn any heat-style shootouts into it. I think it will be more historically accurate than that. I'm expecting it to be a really good-looking, solid, terrific film. I'll be surprised if it's anything but. And of course, Adam Driver's a wonderful actor.
What's he been in? I don't know that name. I'm not very good on all this, sorry.
Okay, Adam Driver, Kylo Ren in the recent Star Wars films. I know you're not a Star Wars guy, so you may have entirely blanked and missed out on that. He was in...
Hang on, was Kylo Ren that long-faced fella who was the sort of Darth Vader surrogate in one of the films? Is that right?
Yes,
Hooray!
yes, exactly.
I got somewhere.
He's in A House of Gucci. He was in Marriage Story.
Right.
Annette, the Sparks movie. He was in the recent-ish Sparks musical.
Yep.
Say recent, a couple of years ago. White Noise.
Zog, we can stop there. I think we've established he's a very popular, well-known actor.
He's a popular and good actor.
Well, you mentioned one of the films there, Last of the Mohicans.
Yes.
I've never been able to watch that film because I haven't even seen the penultimate of the Mohicans yet. So, I won't know what's going on. I hate coming to a series late on. It's like watching Star Trek 4 when you haven't watched Star Trek 3, isn't it? The Last of the Mohicans. Thank you very much. There we go. But yeah, I'm intrigued by this movie. That's promising. It's good that Hollywood is paying attention to motorsport at the moment. Again, you might say, we had the Ferrari versus Ford film. We've got the Brad Pitt film.
Yeah.
The trend is good, and these films, in theory, will be better than Driven, which is not only one of the worst motorsport films ever made, but possibly one of the worst films ever made. Do you remember the Sly Stallone film, Driven? That was supposed to be an F1 movie that ended up being an IndyCar or Champ Car kart series movie, and it was shocking. It was lunacy.
No, I never did see it because it was...
pointless seeing.
It was obviously going to be so bad. There's another film called Driven that I haven't watched, and I haven't decided whether I want to watch it or not. But it's come up a couple of times on my Netflix or Amazon recommendations. I can't remember which one it's on. But it's a DeLorean story movie. I'm not sure, not biopic exactly, but, the story of John DeLorean and the DeLorean motor car. Ooh. And the first couple of times it had popped up on, my recommendation screen, I thought, is the guy who's presumably supposed to be DeLorean there, is that Steve Carell? It looks a bit like Steve Carell doing those straight rolls. But actually it's turned out to be Lee Pace, the guy who is the middle emperor in the Apple TV Foundation adaptation, which is quite interesting. I've got mixed feelings about it as a fan of the Foundation books.
Yep, of course. Asimov.
Of course. Embarking on an adaptation of the Foundation books is a pretty ambitious, possibly crazy thing to try and do, but they did, and it's a slightly mixed bag. It's not all good, but it's very watchable. I am enjoying it, and anyway, Lee Pace, DeLorean, has a significant role in Foundation series.
So is the DeLorean documentary on Netflix? Did you say?
Not a documentary. Not a documentary. It's a feature film. Yeah, it's a movie. No, Amazon. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Amazon, cool. I will plunge into that. I love the DeLorean story. Who doesn't? Come on, it's got everything. It's got outrage, it's got money, it's got innovation, it's got Irish people, it's probably got a drug heist, and it's got an entrapment by the feds. I mean, it's a movie. Of course, it's a movie.
It's quite a story. Yeah,
and it finishes with it being turned into a time machine, so it satisfies my science fiction needs too. Yeah. Come on, what's not to like?
Exactly.
Hey, while we're talking science fiction, we've drifted from Formula One to movies and upcoming car movies.
A little bit, yeah.
Can we talk about space, Zog? Because you and I keep a keen eye on what's going on in space tech at the moment. There have been some notable things happening in the recent month, and there's some truly amazing stuff about to happen in the next month. We'll talk about the future in a moment, but let's talk about what has happened. First of all, Luna 25, the Russian probe that was attempting to land near the South Pole, had a catastrophic failure, an anomaly when it was in low lunar orbit, and crashed into the surface of the moon. Oh, I was really disappointed because, as you know, my favourite rover on any planet, anywhere, including Land Rovers on Earth, is Lunar Cod. the Soviet-era, Russian, if you like, rovers, which landed on the moon in, 70 and 72? Is that about right? Was it 72 and 74? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah. I think you'd be better on those dates.
I love Lunar Cod, and
yeah.
I'd understood that Luna 25 was going to have a rover on board that had been financed by a Saudi Arabian firm or someone else, but they pulled out at the last minute. There was no rover on that, which is a great shame. Because I'd like to have another rover delivered to the moon by the people who were the first to leave Earth. But massive respect to ISRO, the Indian Space Agency, for using their launcher to put Chandrayaan-3 successfully on the lunar surface in the South Pole, a mountainous region, with a simple little lightweight rover. Oh, come on, Zog, this is amazing stuff, isn't it?
And it's also remarkably low cost. They did it for, I think, 75 million.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. No, they did a terrific job. They've done a really, it's a very impressive job that the Indian Space Agency pulled off there. And of course, first to land at the south pole of the moon, which is a significant region, partly because we think there's a decent amount of water there.
Yeah.
Not 100% sure, we're not 100% sure of the distribution of it and how much. Because it's a region that it gets a lot less sunlight than the rest of the moon. There are more regions in there that spend most of their time in
shadow.
Yeah. And that's a good place for water to hang around, because if there is water on the moon, and we know there is, that there is water on the moon, but it's in some cycle of being water vapor in the thin lunar atmosphere, and then freezing into or onto the surface, and then sublimating again into vapor. But we just don't know the detail of quite how much water there is and exactly where it is and how these cycles work.
But we are inching closer to finding out.
Right, exactly. And India are doing a solid job of contributing to that work of getting us a better understanding of it. So, terrific job. Well done.
Yeah, we're after the lunar permafrost, really, aren't we, I suppose?
I think permafrost would be... ask a geologist or a space geologist. I guess, permafrost to me is, it's kind of meters deep frozen soil with a relatively high kind of water concentration. I'm not sure whether that's quite what you've got on any part of the moon. Probably not. But let's find out. But they also did a thing where, you might know more about this, but I think landing on the South Pole required getting the mission into a polar orbit around the moon, which is harder to get into than an equatorial orbit, an orbit that would be in more or less the same plane as the Earth's equator. If you're launching a satellite from Earth into low Earth orbit, or any other Earth orbit, it's easier to get it into an orbit around the equator than it is to get it on a polar orbit.
Yep.
It's the same if you're then doing that at the moon. And
there's a lot of change of direction and velocity to do when you get there to change.
There's exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting because the next proposed American mission to land on the moon, which I believe is Artemis 3, could get pushed to Artemis 4. They are going to use, let me see if I've got this right. Is it called a near rectilineal halo orbit? Imagine the way that a halo behaves around a head.
Yeah.
But a near rectilinear halo orbit is where that orbit is on the far side of the moon. It's greater than the diameter of the moon, and it's eccentric. And that's how they're going to translate to landing in the polar regions, by achieving this near rectilineal, I think it's called that, halo orbit. And this is new. We've not done this before. So I think, as far as I know, the Chandrayaan-3 probe was special before it even landed. The Russian, the Russian what are they called, Roscosmos, failed to make that work for whatever reason.
Just to briefly touch on the Russian thing and Roscosmos, whose boss was recently replaced. The old boss was a little bit nuts, I think.
A little bit nuts. It's like being a little bit pregnant, isn't it?
But Roscosmos, the Russian space program, is suffering massively from the fact that whereas in the days of the USSR it was a reasonably well-funded, well-resourced program, since Russia inherited that and took it forward, they've just massively underinvested in every aspect of it. They don't have enough good young engineers and technicians and professionals working for them, I believe. They just haven't spent enough money. They're just coasting too much, relying too much on their legacy. And I think and so my hot take is simply that this failure is probably at least partly a result of the fact that they just haven't invested enough in their program. But also, at the moment, at the same time that I have a massive respect for what so many individuals achieved as part of the USSR space program.
Oh, yes.
Alexei Leonov and Korolev and others. I'd find it very hard to cheer for any Russian achievements at the moment.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same.
Yeah, there we go. I'd have a very hard time celebrating any Russian achievements at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. So. I've had the privilege of meeting General Alexei Leonov, the first man, first human to walk in space, and it would have been the first man to set foot on the moon if the Soviet N-1 moon rocket hadn't blown up 3 times in testing on the pad, and that they'd managed to get the weight of the lunar cabin, the one-man lunar lander that he would have piloted to the lunar surface. If he managed to get that weight down, he would have been there. Yeah, so I'm with you. Yuri Gagarin and Alexei Leonov, you could argue, were the greatest heroes of the Soviet Union, an organisation which has a lot of stuff to be very embarrassed about, but has much stuff to be proud of as well. Its technical achievements are incredible, really, for a nation like that. So, I'm sad that the Russian programme isn't well funded at the moment. Do you know who's contributing to this, Zog?
Who's contributing to the programme or contributing to not funding it?
Contributing to the lack of funding for the Russian space programme. I'll tell you.
Go on.
Elon Musk. Since NASA decided that they needed autonomy for their crew resupply missions to the space station, the number of Russian flights of the unmanned Progress, which resupplies food and other comestibles, is that a word even?
It is, yeah.
And SpaceX then developed a manned version of Dragon, or human crewed version of Dragon, which could take astronauts to the space station. The number of flights that Russia was getting paid for carrying stuff up to the ISS has dropped significantly. You just got to look at SpaceX's launch cadence now. Where are we? September now? And they've launched 100 rockets this year. 80% of the mass leaving Earth in the last 12 months has been put there by SpaceX. The other 20% is made up by China for 10%, and the other 10% is the rest of the world combined. So that means non-SpaceX American launches too. It's incredible. I think SpaceX's cadence is even greater than Max Verstappen's winning regime cadence at the moment.
I wonder what proportion of the mass that SpaceX are putting into orbit, I wonder what proportion of it is
coming back.
Their own. No, I wonder what proportion of it is.
Starlink.
Of what they're getting into orbit. I wonder what proportion of it is Starlink satellites, their own constellation, and how much of it is commercial payloads for other people. But I mean, certainly if you want a reliable and cheaper way of getting your things into space, SpaceX is it.
Yeah, it's doing it. It's working.
But since we talk about the moon and technical achievements, let's just also mention that it's the UK that is going to put a communication satellite in orbit around the moon.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Who?
I would have to look that up. I'm not sure who's building it, but...
Not Inmarsat or someone like that, is it? No? Do they exist still?
I'm not sure. I can't remember who's building it, but there will be a comm satellite around the moon, will be a British satellite. And this will be a bigger thing. As America is going back to the moon with crewed missions with Artemis, it will be pretty surprising if China doesn't have taikonauts on the moon before too long.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that surprising if India maybe, goes that way as well. They have, big ambitions in space also. There's going to be a lot more activity, around the moon, and we will need some infrastructure up there to support a lot of the activity. And the UK will be contributing to that infrastructure in a significant way in putting a communication satellite up there.
So this is driven by the Artemis project, or the Lunar Gateway project, quite possibly. The Lunar Gateway, if you don't know, is an orbiting space station, again in a near rectilineal halo orbit, I think. Forgive me if I got that right or wrong. Which will be a kind of staging post for regular trips from lunar orbit down to the lunar surface. We will have a lunar outpost in orbit around the moon. That's going to be a hard one to sustain, I think, that one. Hard.
I don't think I've heard any updates on Lunar Gateway for a while. I'm not sure what the status of that is. Because it may be that's kind of dropping down priorities a bit, that its plans have changed a bit. I'm not sure how committed everybody is to Lunar Gateway.
I'm not sure if the proposed first human landing on the moon since Apollo absolutely relies, I think it does absolutely rely on Lunar Gateway. Starship is the lunar landing variant, whatever they call it, the human landing system version, HLS, I think. That is only capable of transporting astronauts from lunar orbit to the lunar surface. It's not designed to carry astronauts from Earth to the moon. They're going to go in the Orion capsule from Earth to the moon on an Artemis SLS rocket and then transfer into Lunar Gateway. The Starship arrives, they get into Starship and then pilot that as a shuttlecraft, I think, down to the lunar surface. But NASA have also put out a second pitch for someone to design an alternative lunar lander to Starship now. They want a bit of redundancy, a different system, and that's been granted now, hasn't it?
Well, here's another thought. SpaceX recently, I think in the last couple of weeks, announced that they were looking at putting in Earth orbit a Starship-based space station. Rather along the lines of, if we remember, before there was an International Space Station, there was Skylab, and Skylab was based at its heart on a section of a Saturn V rocket.
The S4B stage, the third stage, hollowed out, empty. I loved Skylab.
There you go. So I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, there is no Lunar Gateway. Maybe part of what SpaceX is thinking here is that whatever they come up with as a Starship-based station for Earth orbit could also work in lunar orbit and would do the job that the Lunar Gateway would do in this case of being a transfer point between the Orion capsule and a lunar landing version of the Starship to get to get boots on the moon again. I wonder if that's what they're thinking.
You do have to be careful. I always think that projects like this need to operate a bit like airlines. An airline will never buy a fleet of entirely Boeing aircraft. Half their fleet will be made up of Airbus or Embraer or anyone else. Even, directly comparable vehicles, they will mix and match, because if one is grounded, an aircraft grounded, you're knackered, your entire fleet's out. So there's sort of built-in redundancy. And I think that's what they're doing here. And should they really, truly be relying on Starship for not only the lunar landing version, but also the get heavy stuff into orbit, get fuel to the moon, be a space station to the moon? It's asking a lot of a multi-purpose vehicle. And as we saw with the shuttle, sometimes asking it to do too many things results in a compromised vehicle. They have to be very different types, each of these. You make a small change to a rocket, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think I push back a little bit on making that analogy between the shuttle and Starship, and how trying to make the shuttle do too much compromised it, and how a similar thing could happen to Starship. I mean, if the fundamental design of Starship was being changed in order to make it fulfill these different roles in a single platform, then I think that could be the case. But I don't imagine that is what they'll be talking about.
They'll engineer versions, quite different versions.
Exactly, yeah. There'll be something like a special version of, a re-engineered version of the Starship to be, module one of their station, onto which, other bits then get carried up into orbit and bolted on. And again, there'll be another landing, because, at the same time that there's obviously a very direct comparison in that these are reusable space vehicles. I think SpaceX seems to be much more into the idea of making a whole lot of these things and just cranking them out, and therefore presumably being able to
adapt them.
Exactly, adapt them to the different roles. Whereas the shuttle fleet was a much smaller fleet of extremely expensive experimental vehicles.
Like prototype. They were like F1 cars, whereas the Starship is more analogous to, I don't know, a truck platform chassis or something like that. Versatile and churned out in its thousands.
Well, it's fun, isn't it? Because it's a weird mix of cutting edge and old school.
Yeah.
Old school, it's made of steel. It's not made of high-tech composites. It's made of steel.
Outrageous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like a big tin can. It shouldn't look like that. It should look like alabaster. They're right. It seems to work. So, bringing me to Starship in the final minute that we've got of this programme, bringing me to Starship, we are likely to see the launch of, is it Booster 9 and Ship 25? Is that right, I think?
I'll take your word for that.
The stack. Are we going to see the launch of a Starship and booster combination? Second attempt. What are your odds on it succeeding this time? It's likely to happen in the next 3 weeks, I think.
I'm going to say 75%.
Yeah? What, success?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think SpaceX is prepared to fail.
Yeah.
They're prepared to blow stuff up on the way to shaking the problems out of their launch systems.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest problem with the last Starship launch was really it was more the damage to the pad and the spectacular redistribution of all of the concrete under the rocket.
They found lumps of concrete over a mile away, apparently.
Yeah, I believe it.
Let's hope they've got that under control.
I think, I believe they've realised that they were a little bit hand-wavy and we don't need to worry about that. It'll be fine, with the previous launch facility, and they need to pay a bit more attention to the launch pad and making sure that it can survive the huge amount of energy that gets dumped onto it when Starship launches.
An insane amount of energy. I cannot wait to see that. I'm as excited about that as I am for the Singapore Grand Prix, possibly even more so for the rocket launch, and I think you probably are too.
That is pretty exciting. Absolutely. I can't wait.
But for now, we wish Alex well. We look forward to having Sarah back with us as soon as she can. But for now, Zog, thank you very much indeed.
Good to catch up.
Yep, this was Gareth Jones on Speed. I was Gareth, and hey, happy landings, everybody.
For information on how to contact the show, see pictures, get song lyrics, follow us on Twitter, find our Facebook fan page, or to sponsor the show, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!